Now we look at the weekend newspapers, and joining me in the studio is eNCA's political reporter Samkele Maseko. The Lord, thank you so much for your presence, Lord of the Media. Before we get to the papers, the story that is obviously dominating the headlines is the National Executive Committee meeting that is happening this weekend, and you've spent most of your time watching it. Up on the screen, we've got a statement that the ANC veterans have come to Derek Hanekom's assistance. Now, he, of course, became the focus of the Secretary General Ace Magashole's attention when the EFF said that they had met with him and so on. But he is not the only person that has met with members of the opposition. We've had Ace Magashule being accused of forming the ATM. We've had former President Jacob Zuma saying that people must vote for black first, land first. How do you think the veterans' intervention affected the way in which the discussions happened at the NEC, Sam, or did it at all?
At this point in time, you can't say it had any effect, because the motion to debate the issue of Derek Hanekom was tabled first and foremost on Friday afternoon after the President's political overview by Bongani Bongo, who's a known backer of former President Jacob Zuma as a former State Security Minister under former President Zuma. He was the one who rose up in the NEC meeting and said the issue of Derek Hanekom must be first on the agenda. But the agenda of the NEC is decided by the ANC officials, NWC, and the Secretary General. Effectively, was part of the top six and the NWC. So the top six first met on Friday morning from about 9 o'clock till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They did decide and meet with other ANC structures. But when the President gave his political overview, he did speak vaguely on the issue of Derek Hanekom, yes, basically saying that he proposes be the last item on the agenda of the NEC, which may be discussed from today in the afternoon going towards the last day of the NEC tomorrow. So effectively that's now been put as the last item on the NEC agenda. It will be debated either this afternoon or tomorrow morning, from tomorrow morning. But more interestingly, it was basically this NEC is a precursor of what will come or what will be at the National General Council of the ANC, the NGC,
which
the
is
President
lovely.
Kicking it off.
Let me use that as a way to segue into the front page of the Sunday Times. It says, "I dare you." And of course, this is a report that suggests that President Ramaphosa is not at all worried, and in fact saying he's got a date with those who he's trying to remove him at the National General Council. Now, this has been something that's been drumming around and simmering, in the background for a long time. The City Press has been running reports around that. We know that people are saying Musibenzi Zwane spends all his time trying to get this momentum going for the NGC. Now, we know that Sihle Zigalala had already warned ANC members in KwaZulu-Natal that the NGC actually doesn't have the power to get rid of Ramaphosa. Most people want to know how strong he is. Do you think, Samkele, that the ANC balance of forces favors the President as we go toward the NGC, especially if you consider some of the work that the law enforcement agencies are also going to do, and the fact that a lot of these people that are campaigning against him will in fact become subjects of criminal investigations?
The reality is the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is in charge of the ANC NEC. It may not be with a huge majority, but he's got 50, 52, 53 or 54+% of the support in the NEC. His only biggest issue now, and his biggest mistake that many analysts have predicted, is that since his election in 2017 in Nasrec, he has had no ANC campaign that has taken him to the grassroots of the ANC branches to interact with branches. But if you look at the overall support of Ramaphosa within the ANC, he's got significant number of support. Many may say he's got about 58, 56% of the support in the NEC. It's not only the ACE or the Jacob Zuma camp that's preparing for the ANC NGC. Many people are not actually seeing that Ramaphosa himself has got his own machinery with his own allies, your Senzo Mkhunuz, your Bheki Celes, your Zweli Mkhize, your Didi Mambuzas, and your Paul Mashadiles, who are working the ground. Question is, what is Paul Mashatile and DD working towards?
Yeah.
Are they with the president or are they using the president? But Cyril Ramaphosa basically in his political overview on Friday afternoon basically laid down the gauntlet and basically was on fighting mode instead of being his usual diplomatic self and not being a street fighter. He came out guns blazing and is a street fighter, but he also faces resistance from a fighter himself in the streets, which is Ace Magashule.
Now, of course, this is the two big guns that are at each other's throats, right? So you have the president on the one side, the SG on the one side. Ace Magashule ruled the Free State for over 20 years. He's a street fighter. He knows every trick in the book. Cyril Ramaphosa is an ace negotiator, keeps his powder close to his chest. If you were a betting man, Mr. Samkele Maseko, who will you put your money on?
I wouldn't say who I'd put my money on, but I totally have a different view of this street negotiator that Cyril Ramaphosa is purported to only be. You don't rise to the ANC presidency without playing dirty and without being a fighter. If you speak to many people within the business fraternity, they'll tell you that the Cyril Ramaphosa they know is a shrewd businessman who fights. And we all know that when it comes to issues of capitalism and the capitalist system in the world, capitalist people are not negotiators. They are not Mr. Nice.
So do you think there's an iron fist in that velvet glove?
He's also shrewd. For instance, if you engage with some NEC members, specifically with his political overview this weekend when he started the NEC, that's a man who's basically coming out guns blazing and is not giving his opponents the other cheek to give him a fist or to punch him back. He's fighting back and he's punching back. And you basically see with the movements that have been made in provinces such as Limpopo, the suspension of people like Danim Caesar, whom is perceived to be the president's political opponent. I've had many engagements with him, and he says that it's not specifically
So he's taking scalps, basically.
He is going after people. For instance, if you also look at the appointment of Sibongile Bisani, who's a former provincial secretary of Ace Magashule in the Free State, to the office of the presidency, and now being the coordinator of the ANC Youth League, is a political foe of Ace Magashule. It basically tells you that the president is making moves. You look at issues like KwaZulu-Natal, the ANC's biggest region, eThekwini, is in tatters. It's in pieces. It's in pieces. And you look at how Zandile Kumete is being pushed to the wayside, who's arguably the last hope for the Jacob Zuma, the Ace Magashule camp within the ANC to have some sort of a fight back in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. If you go back to the address of Ace Magashule in the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Conference, he was basically saying that young people must wait, which effectively means Mdumiseni Ntuli should not have been elected. Who was behind Mdumiseni Ntuli's campaign? But with that said, it doesn't mean that Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of the ANC, is going to have an easy path in having his presidency in the ANC. And historically, if you look at the ANC and go back to the 2005 NGC in the University of Pretoria, where Thabo Mbeki's decision to fire Jacob Zuma as the deputy president of the ANC was overturned by ANC branches, which basically tells you that the ANC constitution stipulates that the National General Council doesn't have the powers to remove or to elect new leaders, but can co-opt members into the national executive.
Let's go to the City Press. The City Press talks about an ANC NEC face-off, right? And they are presenting the alternative view, not necessarily saying that Ramaphosa threw down the gauntlet, but that quite a few people came batting, trying to take the Eric Hanekom as an early proxy victim on the part of the Ramaphosa campaign. Now, one of the things that we know was that Nomvulo Mokunyane is apparently said to have argued that Eric Hanekom shouldn't attend the NEC meeting or should recuse himself during that meeting. We also know from sources that President Zuma himself came under a lot of criticism for his testimony about alleged spies and calling people spies at the gathering. Sam, you and I were both there on Friday. There were Youth League members toy-toying outside. This face-off in the NEC that the City Press is talking about, was it kind of the usual split, or were there interesting individuals who changed tack and who changed sides?
The most interesting person for me in this whole debate of leadership in the ANC is David Mahlobo.
What happened? Is he with the Ramaphosa camp?
We can never say where David Mahlobo is, but you can see with the movements, his quietness, him just basically focusing on his government work, that there is a shift and he is leaning towards the incumbent of the ANC, which would be President Cyril Ramaphosa, is no longer in good terms with the Ace Magashule, the Jacob Zuma camp within the ANC. But this face-off, as I was saying, is a precursor of the NGC and is basically showing the divisions in the ANC on who lies with who. The issue of Derek Honeycomb is not necessarily about Derek Honeycomb.
No, of course not.
It's about the president. And if Derek Honeycomb is disciplined, removed from the NEC, it basically portrays an image where Ace Magashule, Jacob Zuma, the former regime that was in charge of the ANC government, is the one that's in charge, and President Ramaphosa is weaker.
And if the
so
converse is true, then of course it means that Ramaphosa is in charge. Let's move to the other newspapers, the Sunday World and the Sunday Sun. Tell me about the Sunday World. What caught your attention in that newspaper, Sam?
Specifically for me, within the Sunday World, is this story of Teko Modise.
Yes.
The former Bafana, former Orlando Pirates, former Cape Town and former Sundowns player, basically saying that Teko may lose his home after failing to pay up. It basically sums up the story of South African football players, how after being a marvel on the pitch, earning big bucks while he was still at Sundowns, Pirates, he's basically going towards the route of becoming a pauper. We've seen many players like Mbulelo, Old John Mabizela.
I mean, this is an ongoing saga. We've got these people who make all these monies when they are famous, but very little support given to them, either by their clubs or by the leagues that they play for, to manage their finances, to learn that there's life after football and that they need to be prepared for it.
But it's not just a football problem. It's a problem also within the political realms. Many politicians whom cease to be in power, they basically die as paupers. I've seen many who used to leave.
Well, they live above their means to begin with.
Well, that's true, but it also goes back to financial training of South Africans. We've got no financial skills, financial management skills.
Talking about financial training, I know there's a story about Senzo Muhiwe that also caught your attention, but there was a story in the City Press that I found really interesting. It's Dondo Mohajani, the Treasurer General of Treasury, saying that in order for Treasury to actually tighten its belt, they're proposing a 10% cut in terms of wages for public servants. Given the fact that VAT is biting, how do you think that is going to go down with unions like Nihao, like Dinosa, your public sector unions, Pop Crew, and so on? Is that something that the Treasury will be able to push through? And more importantly, with someone like Senzo Mchunu as head of public administration, will he be able to drive that message across?
That won't happen. That's a straight up answer. It won't happen. If it happens, it's going to be a full-out battle between the unions and government. And knowing Senzo Mchunu, he's a negotiator himself. He knows his way around the unions. He used to be a teacher. He comes from the ranks of SATU. So I don't see it happening, but a negotiated settlement may be reached. And I don't think it will be reduced, but that may increase. That may affect the wage negotiations rather than a 10% deduction in salaries.
All right. Thank you so much, as always, for the granular detail and bringing it back to the big picture. Samkele Maseko this week joining me to unpack the newspapers. Well, that's your fix for the week. Take care and see you again next week.